So, who were the discussion group secretaries? Which one? I know. Who did? Okay. So we are clear about what you discussed, yeah? The advantage and the disadvantage of a compassionate heart. Or the dangers, where does the danger lie? Because it's important to talk about these things also.
There was, I just say some sentences.
Yeah.
Say that, the fear that if you're compassionate to someone who is hardly to bear, that most people have difficulties staying with this person, that he will stay and and kind of.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
That is a very good point.
Yeah,
What if you stuck with them?
that,
What if they stay anyway?
that compassion may have good effects, but it takes a while.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
It takes a while. It's a lot of effort to change our feelings towards that person. But yeah, it's a good point. I never thought about it.
That there is a difficulty to be in compassion in the situation itself, that you have to have like a perspective from the outside.
Yeah.
If you're angry or and that there is a difference between compassion and empathy, like that wanting someone to be free of suffering and the causes of suffering is compassion, but empathy could be something different.
And did you talk? What did you say? What it could, in what way it could be different?
Someone said that you could be arrogant while you're being empathic, or like seeing someone as having weaknesses, and then being empathic from a like superior point of view, which is different than compassion.
Okay. Mercy.
Okay.
Pity. Mercy, not mercy and
Pity.
compassion. Pity.
Usually we call it pity. So this is the problem about words, especially if it's not your language.
Yeah.
That then, because empathy, usually, if you again, if you look at the definition of empathy, no, it's a very beautiful mind, actually. So empathy knows the suffering of the other, but does not suffer with the person. But it knows the suffering, and it can communicate, I know what you feel. So it's a very strong mind. Empathy is a very strong mind. Has a lot of like connection inside. So arrogance and pity, no connection. Yeah. So when we use the word pity, it's like, oh, am I glad I'm not in this situation? But yeah, okay, I'll help you. Something like this, So when we do help, also, it's like, then again, the awareness comes in. What's operating here? Is it to make me feel better? Is it because I have a feeling of being superior if I constantly look at that person? Or do I see myself in that situation? So in Lausanne, they made research on this in Lausanne University in Switzerland. And they came up with a definition. Like, empathy is, it is like being in the shoes of the other, but then you give the shoes back, they're not yours. And also they made research, with the things on the brain. So actually empathy arises if you're not putting the burden on your shoulders, having to do something about it, but just listening. Where the brain lights up, where empathy is sitting, is by just listening. And we underestimate the power of listening, actually. So, yeah, but pity, it can be pity, as you said. So then we would use pity, that's something that separates. Yeah, great, thank you.
And what's the difference between empathy compassion?
Well, again, with compassion, one is not quite sure. Actually, we stopped using compassion too much because in schools and things like that, people kind of go like, it's old-fashioned and all this. Empathy is a bit more, when the scientists kind of examine it, they call it empathy. So then we use these words, but basically it's the same. But so the difference between empathy and pity, yeah. So compassion also is like, in German we have two words. One is Mitgefühl, suffering with or feeling with, and the other one is Mitleid. So Mitleid would go into pity, means, Mitgefühl is feeling with, like knowing what the other feels. Mitleid is suffering with. So then one would use kind of these two. What is the difference between two? Compassion, basically, passion just means a very strong emotion. Yeah.
I think the Western or scientific notion about this is that compassion adds the will to do something about it.
Yeah.
It's not just feeling it,
okay.
I really want to do something about it.
Yeah, that can also be, that would be the Buddhist kind of thing, feeling what the other person feels or knowing what they feel, but it's not your suffering. Yeah. What happens very often when we listen to somebody suffering, because we have mirror neurons, so it reminds us of something that happened to us, and then instead of continuing to listen, we can't wait to tell our own story to this other person, and then again we get stuck in our own suffering, and then it's not exactly that. But like in Buddhism, it would be, yes, you see the suffering of the other, you have a wish that they be free, and if you can do something, you do very spontaneously, like a small child falls over and or is about to fall and you reach out to catch it, or you bring it back up and you clean it up and you hold it and you hug it. Even if you don't know the child, you will do that very, very naturally. As then people grow up, somehow we lose it. We lose that very spontaneous compassion, unfortunately. Then it becomes very narrow, only to those people that we like. This is what Einstein says, like, unfortunately, our good emotions, like love, compassion, is very limited to the people that we like. But yeah, it's good points that you came up with. Any other points?
Someone said that when you feel compassion, is not doing for someone something that you can do or solve it, but just to do it.
Yeah, so again, this is, it's when if you do study something like this, or if you then start to practice, it's really good what you mean by these words, because basically it's just words. Yeah. So actually, when at the beginning of Buddhist studies, what you learn is a long list of definitions, so that people agree. It's like when you want to start mathematics, you have to agree that 2 and 2 is 4, even if your opinion is like 2 and 2 is 5. But if you want to go into that system, you need to agree to certain conventions. As you said, like everybody agrees that that piece of paper is worth 100 shekel or something like that. Because otherwise, we talk with the same words, but we mean something different. And this is where communications very often falls short, because when I just throw out the word world, and then I would let you think about it, and then then you tell me what you think the word, what it means, you would come up with like different opinions. Yeah, so it's a bit like this. So that's why in Buddhism there's the word, but then there's the definition of what it means. So basically the definition for compassion is the wish for somebody to be free from suffering, which it wakes you up. It gives you the energy to reach out and to do something, or to still stay with the person even then you can't help. To have the courage to be there with a totally open heart. And this for us is very difficult. We're very compassionate when they allow us to help them, and on top of it when it works. When they come and say, oh, I feel really better. Sometimes because I'm not very good at doing yoga, actually I'm absolutely zero at doing yoga or any other exercises since I stopped doing sport or just the occasional going on a bicycle. Yeah, it's like the body gets stiff and all this. Now we have a lot of therapists sometimes in the group, so they offer me some whatever therapy. And I can feel, like sometimes absolutely no difference. But I can feel how they ask me, how is it? I can feel they want me to say, it works, I feel better. Yeah? And this is what we all have when we kind of get involved. We have this hope, and this is false hope now, that this should work. And then when it doesn't, we start to question ourselves, that maybe I did something wrong, or it wasn't the right thing to do, or this and that. Not really seeing, well, that person doesn't have the conditions so that my massage or whatever it is helps. Or also, they are not putting enough effort into the whole thing that it will help. Yeah, so this is one of our problems, that our compassion is definitely there, because everybody has natural compassion, but it needs to work for us to be able to continue. Otherwise we get sad or depressed or angry, or we stop or start to doubt ourselves and these kind of things. So compassion is a complicated thing. Also, again, like any other of these what we study. Yeah. Okay.
We cannot be compassionate to someone without having the ability to be compassionate for the same thing in ourselves.
That's a very good point.
That we are all like suffering or fighting in the same samsara.
Yeah.
And so we are also having anger and doing mistakes and we also said that there is a contradiction between the feeling of I have to fight for my own existence and I'm alone, so I cannot be kind because I'm alone, to this what we did in the meditation, that there are many people who are kind to us or were kind to us, and that we're feeling grateful and not alone. So it's like that we're sometimes fighting for our own survival and feeling really lonely, so we cannot be generous and kind. And we have to take care of ourselves.
Yes.
And sometimes we don't have trust that the world or the other is benevolent and wants, that we and there is like a contradiction between or it's like it's solving. It can solve this feeling of being alone, remembering that you are actually all the time getting something good from the environment, and got all the time something, but it loosens up this survival, alone feeling.
You see, again, if you look at the Buddhist teachings, what you are describing is the characteristics of samsara. Sometimes we need to defend ourselves for, in order to survive, but at the same time, if we do it with anger, then we create more causes to be attacked again in the future. Yeah, that is the problem. So samsara, because we have this wrong view, like we have this dualistic thinking, and then also many of our decisions come from this I that doesn't really exist. So whatever we do, it always ends in dukkha. Yeah, so whatever we do is kind of wrong. We cannot remain in samsara with this view of I and others as really existing, like separate from the mind or separate from us, and be happy and fulfill the wish for lasting happiness. We cannot. So this birthright that every being has of lasting happiness can only be fulfilled or attained when you realize that what we see out there is actually just a projection of the mind. When we wake up from this dream of inherent existence. So this is why it's so difficult, when we ask me these questions, what do I do if? Because you don't do anything is wrong, but you do something is also wrong. Yeah, so then we try to be the least harmful when we do need to do something and really understand this situation came about, but now I have to defend myself because of my previous actions of aggression. So now, if I need to react, I do it as gentle as possible or whatever. You see what I mean? Like generosity and beggars. Do you give money? Not so great. You not give money? Not so great either. So what do? Then you need to make your own decision. The main thing is that if you give something, that you give with respect. Yeah, the respect of thanking the beggar that he needs something because you can practice generosity. You see, when you see a homeless person or a beggar, it's like we can't imagine ourselves in such a situation. I think none of them has planned it. It was nobody's ambition to end up in the street as a homeless person. And sometimes it happens very quickly. You lose your job, you can't pay your apartment, you're in the street, you can't take showers, as a man you get a beard, and then all of a sudden your teeth fall out and you smell bad, and then you go and apply for a job. Sometimes people say, well, they should go work. Try to apply for a job after you have lived in the streets for like 2-3 months. The way you look and the way you smell. Yeah, so it's very difficult, this whole thing. We cannot fix samsara, and this is most of your questions, because it comes from a view of, but I need to have happiness in this life. Most of your questions go into, how can I have a happy samsara now? We cannot. We can only fix our mind. We can only fix our mind to see that things do not exist inherently from their own side, and by actively actually working with compassion and developing. These are the two wings of the path. The wisdom to see that actually nothing exists on an ultimate level, but on a conventional level, yes, there is suffering. Yeah? And with compassion also, when we talk about compassion, it is compassion when you know that compassion has causes, meaning previous actions. Not just the conditions, but also previous actions, why this person is in that situation. So that means one can stop the causes. You see, if you think that the suffering comes from who knows where, then of course, what are you going to do about it? How can it stop if you don't recognize the main cause? And the main cause for our and everybody else's suffering is believing in a separate me or I or self, and acting out of that space. Now, very often up in the head, we understand that this I is not there. There is no essence in us. There's not something that is always the same. For example, we know that we have different emotions. So sometimes I become very friendly, other times I can be very aggressive. Then again, I can be very generous. Then again, I can be very miserly. So which one is the real I? And we project something in all these other states of mind, that there's something that remains the same. And that is the problem, because all the negative emotions come out of that space, not seeing the space of the other. The view is very, very narrow. Tibetans, they are very, very direct. When somebody asked my teacher, what if somebody attacks me and comes to kill me? And then the teacher said, yeah. And then he says, well, then I have to kill that person. So then my teacher said, well, then somebody dies, doesn't it? And he says, yes. And then the teacher said, then why not you? Why the other? Why not you? You see, this is how they think. Very high beings. But we're not like this. We couldn't say, okay, my karma, and then we go peacefully. because we don't have a good view of karma. We don't understand it. We don't know that there is rebirth, and this person who is killing me now, they're not able to throw me into a lower state if I don't have anger against them. The one who throws me into lower state is me, with my selfish actions. Yeah. So, but this we are not able to do. So then protect yourself by all means, but also maybe with the wish. I wish I wouldn't come into these situations again and again and again, where I have to protect myself. Then maybe something kind of shifts, and yeah, take vows so that you purify that karma to come again and again and again into situations where you cannot be generous, where you cannot be kind. Because these are karmic results. Yeah? And for that we need to have quite a broad view. Okay? Good. So anybody, another discussion group would like to say something?
In our group, we took it to a different level.
Okay.
How it turned out. So we talked about the advantages and disadvantages of bodhicitta, or
Okay.
the bodhisattva path.
Okay.
Maybe because compassion is quite obvious, it has many advantages.
That's okay. Bodhicitta is...
Anyway, so we talked about bodhicitta, and then I think the main disadvantage, I mean the advantage is very beautiful and noble and inspiring. Of course, we'd be all happy if we had it. And the disadvantage is it seems very far, almost ungraspable. And someone said it's much more difficult to realize bodhicitta than even emptiness. So the ideal is so really ungraspable that it's become like there is some alienation. And if this is the goal of the path and you don't understand the goal, then you can despair. And then we had a discussion about this, and there was one part of the group that said, yeah, it can take countless eons and it's fine because it's a very long path and we're very happy to go on it because it is very inspiring. And the other side said that liberation could be just here and now. And,
Yeah, okay.
And it's important for us to have the belief in that. And if we know that liberation is very, very, very far away, again, almost ungraspably far away, then maybe we will not, it will be very difficult for us to practice.
Yeah, there's different reactions to that. It's very far away. You see, I used to climb mountains. So when I know the mountain is really difficult and quite high, I have much more energy to go than when I think it's easy. So also, when we see how difficult it is, we're not putting pressure on ourselves. We're not pushing, and we give ourselves a lot of space and a lot of time to do it. Whereas it can also be totally discouraging. Then one would see and look, well, do I have a choice? I want to have this lasting happiness. Do I have a choice not to work for my happiness? Because even liberation for us is like pretty far away, I think, also, at least for me. So, but as you continue to study these things, of course, when you hear it for the first time, this is like, oh no, it's too difficult. But when you start to study it, when you start to practice it, you become familiar with the idea, and then it doesn't matter so much that it's not going to happen in a few lifetimes. It really doesn't matter, because as you go along the path, I think I already said it, even if there's no enlightenment, when I look what Buddhism did for me in just these 25, 26 years, it's good enough for me to continue. Yeah? And it's a bit like when you want to become a millionaire, so you start saving money, or you start to work, so you're not going to be from zero a millionaire. So as you go along the path, you will have more compassion, you will have more patience, because these are the trainings of a bodhisattva. So even though you're not complete yet, but that will increase. Yeah. But yeah, so it's interesting to see how people react to this thing that it might last a long time. Usually the Tibetans say, "Why are you in such a hurry?" You know, and they say we have been circling mindlessly in samsara since beginningless time, and now we have a method to get out of it, and now it has to be fast. So sometimes also they go like, what is your reasoning behind this? Yeah. If you think that our mind has been existing since beginningless time, and then we worry that it lasts 3.5 countless eons. Why worry? Just do it. And yeah, Buddhism is like, think very big, only the highest is the best for me. Look very far ahead, and then start to walk where you are. Yeah. When I heard about bodhicitta, because I don't know if I already told you, I always thought I was like totally insignificant, and I was very shy, but I was also very aggressive at the same time. I was full of contradictions. And and then I thought, I left school when I was 15 and all this. So when I heard about bodhicitta, I thought, wow, for this, to develop that beautiful mind, because can you think of anything that is more noble than an attitude? I know I can't do this now, but I want to train so I can be of benefit to all sentient beings. Can you think of anything more noble than that? Or better to put effort in to think that? I mean, I don't know, I must have had previous imprints or something. Because I thought, wow, you don't need to be beautiful, you don't need to be young, you don't need to have to go to university, you don't need to have to be terribly intelligent, you don't need to be famous, you can just start. I was so inspired. I thought, like, this is for everybody here. No limitations of which country you're from, whether you're man or woman or whatever. So I was quite inspired to hear this. And, taste that thought in the morning, maybe, when you get up, and think, wow. The aspiration, not needing to do it, but just to put the mind in that direction. Whoever hears, sees, touches, or thinks about me, may it be of benefit to them. All of a sudden, you feel something. Yeah, it's not just there up in the head and you go, oh, it's too big. It's just aspiration. Yeah. So when we talk about bodhicitta, this mind of enlightenment, so of course first we haven't even gone through the steps how to develop it. So first you look at the steps, and then maybe you find it inspiring, and then you practice what is called aspiring bodhicitta. Like you say, yeah, that's a good idea. I think I want to practice that. And you're not doing anything yet. You just nourish these kind of seeing the disadvantage of self-cherishing, seeing the kindness of others, what we did this morning in the meditation. Did you feel a difference in your mind when you start to think about all these beings who produce our clothes, our food, and drink, and this and that? If ever you feel lonely or depressed, make yourself a cup of tea and look deeply into your cup of tea, and then try to see how many people are involved, just to bring about this cup of tea. And sit down and make a list. You will not finish with that list. And then you think, wow, so many people are in this cup of tea. Like you talked about money energy. So much energy of these people is in here. And what am I doing? I'm sitting here and feeling lonely and feeling useless. And then this thought, what could I do for them? Like, of course we feel selfish and then we feel guilty, because the thought behind, oh, what could I do for them, is not coming. And then if you say, I am going on this path to awakening, so then at one point I can be of real benefit to them. Like the Dalai Lama, he's, as I said, whatever he says, people are very happy and they all agree what he says. And it's always sold out. no matter how big the hole is, except